We are awakening together. This is our weekly gathering we hold online. For more information, visit our website, awakening-together.org. We'd love to see you there.
All right. Good morning, everyone. How are you? It's good to see you. So welcome to our Sunday morning weekly gathering. According to my calendar, it is the 24th of January already. Can you believe that? This first month of 2021 is almost gone, and I'm still learning to write 2021.
Thank you, Dawn.
All right, so I do want to share the statement of purpose that I've selected for today's weekly gathering. Today's weekly gathering is titled, Wanting to Know Invites Deception into Our Lives. Wanting to know. That's what invites deception into our lives. So that's what we'll be talking about today. And I thought the core value that went along with that was our fifth core value. It says, we accept all forms as temporary appearances, permitted through enduring awareness of self. We live this value by honoring all appearances and all experiences while continually reflecting on changeless truth. And it occurred to me that if we live that value deeply, we have no need to know, right? We have no need to understand. Therefore, we're not inviting deception. So I thought it was the perfect core value for today. Thank you very much for playing that, Dawn. And I'll share why I love that song for today's weekly gathering. Because that song to me really demonstrates how much we don't like being deceived. I mean, think about this. There's this woman he just loves. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. You know, please don't ever leave me. But don't deceive me, right? Don't deceive me, right? In spite of all of that, what I really don't want is I don't want to be deceived. You know, and none of us like to be deceived. We don't want to be deceived by our spouse. We don't want to be deceived by our children. We don't want to be deceived by our parents. You guys wouldn't want to find out that I've been deceiving you all this time, right? We don't like to be deceived. And yet, like the title of today's weekly gathering says, that desire to know invites deception. So it's kind of funny. We don't want anybody else to deceive us, but we're willing to be deceived by our own minds all the time. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But first, I'm going to invite Glenda to share a reading. The reading is by Adyashanti. It's called Freedom and the Unknown. Glenda, if you'd take the mic and share. Thank you.
Good morning. Freedom and the Unknown by Adyashanti. Human beings have a drive for security and safety, which is often what fuels the spiritual search. This very drive for security and safety is what causes so much misery and confusion. Freedom is a state of complete and absolute insecurity and not knowing. So in seeking security and safety, you actually distance yourself from the freedom you want. There is no security and freedom. At least not in the sense that we normally think of security. This is, of course, why it is so free. There's nothing there to grab hold of. The unknown is more vast, more open, more peaceful, and more freeing than you ever imagined it would be. If you don't experience it that way, it means you're not resting there. You're still trying to know. That will cause you to suffer because you're choosing security over freedom. When you rest deeply in the unknown without trying to escape, your experience becomes very vast. As the experience of the unknown deepens, your boundaries begin to dissolve. You realize, not just intellectually, but on a deep level, that you have no idea who or what you are. A few minutes ago, you knew who you were. You had a history and a personality. But from this place of not knowing, you question all that. Liberated people live in the unknown and understand that the only reason they know what they are is because they rest in the unknown moment by moment without defining who they are with the mind. You can imagine how easy it is to get caught in the concept of the unknown and seek that instead of truth. If you seek the concept, you will never be free. But if you stop looking to myths and concepts and become more interested in the unknown than in what you know, the door will be flung open. Until then, it will remain closed. I've seen people who have never meditated come to satsang and have a deep experience of the unknown. And I've known many who remain in the trance because they stay with the mind's techniques and strategies. There is no prerequisite for experiencing the unknown. Everyone has equal access to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Glenda, and thank you for being easily available, for being my reader and responding right away. Sometimes the most challenging part of being the minister for the weekly gathering is finding a reader, and you made that easy for me. So thank you very much. All right, so 2020 is over, and we have no idea what 2021 will bring. But we know what came in 2020 because we're looking back at it. And one of the things that was really interesting to me in 2020 was the number of people that were believing some really incredible conspiracy theories. Things that to me were obvious, had no truth to them. And yet there were a lot of people believing them fully, even willing to kill, to become violent. Because of these conspiracy theories. And to be honest, we lost 2 Awakening Together ministers because they became so involved in conspiracy theories that they backed away from Awakening Together and resigned their ordination. And this isn't just something that I was noticing. I know that because there's an organization for integrity of spiritual teachers. I forget the exact title of the organization. It's run by Rick Archer and Craig. What's Craig's name, Don, that used to teach here?
Holiday.
Craig Holiday, yeah, and you know, they have this organization to help keep spiritual teachers in their integrity, and they have special programs. And one of their special programs one day this year in the fall was about why so many spiritual students are attracted to conspiracy theories. Now, I wasn't able to go. But once I saw that, I became curious, why are people attracted to these conspiracy theories? So I went and looked it up myself. It's not hard to do with the internet. I want to share with you a little bit about what I found. Now, I want to tell you, I'm not just talking about conspiracy theories here, because as I read this, I found this is just the general characteristic of the ego. And the question could be, instead of why are so many people interested in conspiracy theories, the question could be, why are so many people interested in the ego? So listen with that ear as I read to you a little bit of what I discovered. Research shows that when people feel a strong sense of uncertainty, they're more likely to believe in conspiracy theories. This is especially true for those who have a high need for, listen to this word, cognitive closure. You know what cognitive closure is? That's the mind saying, oh, I know. That's what cognitive closure is. I know, right? So this is especially true for those who have a high need for cognitive closure. In other words, they feel deeply uncomfortable if they don't get answers. You know what that really describes is the ego. The ego is deeply uncomfortable with the unknown. It is deeply uncomfortable with I don't know. You know, one of the fun things in meditation, I'm sure any of you guys who have meditated have noticed this. One of the fun things in meditation is that the way that you're aware of your mind in meditation is that you catch it doing things that it does all the time. But you may not catch it if you didn't sit down and meditate and watch it in that way, right? And you can actually watch your mind make up stories. It makes up stories and then chooses from the options that it made up what it wants to believe. Do you realize that's going on all the time, but we aren't noticing it? So what's going on in our very own mind is that it is making up stories. It even has a variety of options. Maybe this is what's going on. Maybe this is what's going on. Maybe this is what's going on. I'll pick this one. That becomes a belief, but we don't even see it as a belief. We think it's true. And then we go about our lives believing our imagination. Conspiracy theories is just an exaggeration of that process that goes in our minds all the time. It's amazing. Listen to the second paragraph. Conspiracy theories can offer a psychological island to land on when we feel like we're treading water. They offer some concreteness, even though they're totally made up. Even though there's no reality to them, they offer concreteness. See, this is what goes on with the ego, right? The story I'm believing, whatever it is, about why so-and-so looked at me that way, is totally made up. There's no concreteness there, but it offers me that sense of concreteness. Okay, you guys hear how ridiculous this is? It offers me that sense of concreteness. Adyashanti said, human beings have a drive for security and safety. This very drive for security and safety is what causes so much misery and confusion, right? It's that desire for cognitive closure, that desire for I know, even if I know, is completely made up. This is what goes on in our minds all of the time. So again, conspiracy theories can offer a psychological island to land on when we're treading water. They offer some concreteness when we feel helpless about our lives. And then it gives an example. Perhaps someone's child has unexplained health issues. Believing in a conspiracy theory about how pharmaceutical companies are purposefully using vaccines to make kids sick may seem appealing to such a desperate parent. Deciding to refuse vaccines then gives them some sense of control. Again, it doesn't even matter that there's no truth to it, right? It's amazing. I remember the first time I noticed this. It's a minor event, really, a very minor event, but I noticed it clearly in my mind, and then I started seeing it everywhere. It was several years ago when my daughter was young, and I was driving her to school. And, when you drive to school, most people get in a really routine down to the minute. Like, we walk out the door at 7:11 every morning because I know that I'll be there at 7:20, right? I mean, it's very routinized. And because there are so many people in the same routine, as you're driving to school, you see the same cars, the same kids at the bus stop, all the same events on the way because everybody's in this minute by minute routine. So there was this one particular bus stop that we would drive by on the way to Jasmine's school. And on this one particular day, there was a pickup truck that we had never seen before, parked at the bus stop. Jasmine noticed it, and she said, well, what's that guy doing? My mind quickly went through whatever possibilities it went through, picked one, and answered as if I knew. Oh, it's cold today. They're just waiting in the bus stop with their kids so they don't have to stand outside in the cold. I don't know that. I have no idea. Maybe that car wasn't even parked there because of the bus stop. Maybe it was because of a nearby house. completely made up. But for the first time, I saw it. I mean, that was the enlightened moment. Is for the first time I saw that I made that up and then passed it on as if I knew. I also saw the sense of comfort of, okay, I know what that is. Right? Okay, I got that. After that, I started being really hypervigilant about my mind making stuff up. And it felt like for years, one of the most common things that came out of my mouth was, I do not know the answer to that question. Because I had Jasmine, who was young, and she'd always, Mama, what's that? Mama, what's that? Also, Danielle was living with at the time, and Danielle was also very much, Regina, what's going on here? What's going on, blah, blah, blah. And I kept saying to them, I do not know the answer to that question. But I knew that every time I said, I do not know the answer to that question, previously, my mind would have made up an answer and passed it on as if it was a fact. That's what we do. It's ridiculous. We're all walking around in a fantasy, just making stuff. Yeah, I know what's going on there. Yeah, I know why he said that. Yeah, I know what the government's doing behind the scenes, right? In the room where it happened, where I've never been. I know what they're talking about in there. No, you don't. You're making it up. And then you believe in it. Let me read another paragraph from this article on conspiracy theories. Confirmation bias is our brain's tendency to look for information that supports what we already believe. So here's what that means. Once your mind makes up something to fill a gap, it's really a gap of not knowing. It's a gap of mystery, and we're not comfortable with that. So once your mind makes up something to fill the gap and you believe it, you then start looking for proof. You then start seeing things with confirmation bias. And you'll see things in a way you didn't see them before, because now you're looking literally to prove that you're right. Let me read this entire paragraph. Confirmation bias is our brain's tendency to look for information that supports what we already believe. This tendency can lead us to talk to people we know agree with us. Oh my God. Do you know that's exactly what happens with conspiracy theories, for example? People start looking only at the YouTubes that support the conspiracy theory they believe in. I mentioned we lost 2 ministers. They have cut us off, and they're involved in people who agree with them. That's confirmation bias. But we all do this. Like let's say, I don't know you very well, Diane, but I'm going to use you as an example because you're right in front of me. Let's say Diane says something that I don't understand why she said that. My mind starts making something up. I latch on a thought. Oh, she's got this intent that's not so good, right? And then I happen to hear Cindy make a little comment about Diane that makes me think, oh, maybe she doesn't like Diane either. I gravitate to Cindy. And now Cindy and I can fuel our little fire, right? That's how this works. How many of y'all have done this? Come on. Everybody's done it, right? We're making stuff up, believing our stuff, and then we're finding the people, the YouTube videos, the other sites and perceptions that agree with what we've made up. Again, let me go back to this paragraph. Confirmation bias is our brain's tendency to look for information that supports what we already believe. This tendency can lead us to talk to people we know agree with us, or it could find us scanning a Google search results page and clicking on any of the links that show us what we're already looking for. If I already think the Illuminati is controlling the world's banks and I search for Illuminati banks, my eyes will be drawn to the link that says every bank CEO is an Illuminati member. Of course, I don't know who wrote that. I don't know if they're full of crap or not, but that's the article I want to read. Right? That's the article I want to read. We do that all the time. Again, even if we're not involved in conspiracy theories. So now we've really got this compounded problem in that there was a gap, something we didn't know. Our mind quickly looked at some possibilities, all of which that it made up, selected one, we believe it, and now we're looking for evidence to prove that we're true. It's compounding the problem. And we all do this all of the time. The next paragraph, this is really interesting too. All these paragraphs are very, very eye-opening. You might think that how well a conspiracy theory takes root in someone's mind depends on how plausible the theory is. As it turns out, though, content isn't that important. Whether someone adopts a conspiracy theory or not depends more on their overall proneness to believe in conspiracy theories in the first place. In other words, it doesn't have to be at all realistic. And again, even if we're not believing in conspiracy theories, that's true for the stuff that we're believing too. It doesn't have to be at all realistic. There doesn't have to be one iota of truth in it. The only thing that's driving us to believe it is what Adyashanti called our drive for security and safety, or what this article called our high need for cognitive closure. You know what all of this means? Is the ego is completely uncomfortable not knowing. And it will do anything, including believing the most ridiculous idea ever planted, in order to feel like it knows something. And this isn't just about those people who are believing the conspiracy theories right now. This is about all of us. So we have to begin to ask ourselves, can I get by not knowing? Can I survive if I don't understand what I see? Can I be comfortable in the gap, in the mystery? And I'll tell you something else that you might already be figuring out, because you guys are smart. If you can't be comfortable in the gap, in the unknowing, you won't wake up. Because guess what wake up is? It's living in the unknowing. That's what Adyashanti was talking about in this article. So it's kind of like you have a choice. Ego or truth. But the funny thing here is truth is not knowing. Ego is pretending to know. It's kind of like a distorted idea of truth, right? It's kind of like, well, the ego wants truth too, but it wants truth now. It wants mental truth, and it doesn't even care if it's true. It'll just pretend like it's true. Right? That's what the ego wants. It's a distorted version of truth. So it could be, we could see it really in a very innocent light as your natural calling for truth. All humans are born with a natural desire to know truth. But then that natural desire to know truth is hijacked by the ego, and it just becomes cognitive knowing. But because it's not truth, no piece of information that results in that sense of cognitive closure permanently satisfies, right? So, why the heck did Diane say that? Blah, 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 blah. Here's why. Here's her evil intent. Okay, well, great. Life goes on. Diane's not even in my life anymore. But now, what's going on over there? Constantly seeking this imitation truth, which is knowing. Because none of the imitation truth that it settles in is like, okay, that's it. That satisfies me, right? So it's always looking for truth in an untrue way. A Course in Miracles calls this a distorted miracle principle. Right? It's a distorted miracle principle. The true miracle principle, the true calling for truth is genuine. We do have a natural desire for truth, which could be the ultimate security and safety. That drive is natural. That drive is innocent. That drive is what calls us home. The problem is that it gets hijacked by the ego and we don't notice the distortion. And so we live making things up, believing them, and seeking proof that we're right. I mean, this is why we have all of these TV news channels that are bent in certain directions. You know, like one day I remember, I can't remember what was going on in the world, but there was something major going on in the world. And it was one of those things where if you turned on CNN or Fox, it was the only thing they were talking about. It was that big, right? They weren't talking about anything but whatever that was. And as they were talking about it and reporting on it, they were also putting little captions. You know, like if it was about Donald Trump, it might say, Donald Trump said, and then there'd be a caption at the bottom of the screen. And the caption would last for some time, maybe 5-10 minutes, even though other things were moving on the screen. Well, what I found really interesting as I was flipping back and forth between CNN and Fox was the captions. Because they were telling that same story. They were talking about the same event, but the captions had a definite spin. CNN's caption had a definite spin. Fox's caption had a definite spin. And we all know that people tend to pick CNN or Fox or maybe another similar station because it agrees with what I want to believe. That's why we watch it. That's why we watch it. That's why we watch it. That's called an ego preservation strategy. It's continuing to prove me right. That's why I like it. You know what that is? That's a great big giant conspiracy theory. It can't be truth because CNN and Fox have completely different stories. They're both believing what they want to believe. They're passing it on that way, and you're believing it because that's what you want to believe. So maybe those two ministers we lost aren't the only two that are caught up in conspiracy theories. Maybe it's a lot more common than that. One thing that interested me, of course, is, you know, we had these protests and riots and looting, right? You can't call them all protests if you're being completely honest. We have protests and riots and looting for Black Lives Matter, primarily over the summer. And one thing that I found interesting was I noticed certain people who are more tending to lean towards Fox News and the right were saying those riots. Wait, am I getting this right? No. Let me start over. I'm getting this wrong. The people who were more leaning to the left, okay, so Democrat-leaning people, right? Black Lives Matters leaning people. They were looking at these riots and this looting, which doesn't shine favorably on their beliefs, right? They're looking at these riots and they're looting, and they're saying it was actually the right-wing people that started the riots, pretending they were Black Lives Matter people. Right? This was all over Facebook. Everybody believing it, everybody sending it to everybody else. Those weren't Black Lives Matter people doing that. That was actually right-wing fascist groups starting it, making it look like it was Black Lives Matter people. Now, what's really interesting, okay, you ready for the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey used to say? Is just recently we had this, what they call it, insurrection, when these right-wing people stormed the Capitol. You know what I saw on Facebook last week from the right-leaning people? That was really Antifa, the left, pretending to be the right, storming the Capitol, giving the right a bad name. Same friggin' story. And guess what? Everybody's going to believe what they want to believe. I kind of want to say, how stupid are we? You know, I mean, we're here in Awakening Together. And if there's one thing I know about Awakening Together, I know, and I know this with all of my heart, that the reason Awakening Together was born was to be pure. Awakening Together was born in order to transmit helpful teachings regarding pure truth and lead people in the direction of that pure truth. So why the heck do we let our minds get entertained with all this stuff that has nothing to do with that, with all this stuff that's made up? You know, why would you and I sit down at dinner and get into a political conversation, me presenting my point of views, and I know I'm right because I watch CNN and they're telling the truth, and you doing the same thing from Fox or whatever? You know, why would we do that? Is it because we really do prefer the ego? I know that's not true. It's because we're just still caught up in the ego. That's different than really preferring the ego. And so this is why one of the questions that Holy Spirit taught me, and it's really emphasized in NTI, this is why this question is so important. What do I truly want? You know, you could argue that because the ego is not dead in you, you could argue that there is a part of you or a part of the mind that definitely wants to cling to the ego. And it gets all caught up in these stories and these political points of view or what I'm believing about Diane or whatever. But it's, you know, my experience is that that wanting that comes from the ego, that wanting cognitive closure, for example, and that willingness to make stuff up and believe it, kind of lives here. And when I ask that question, what do I truly want? It drops down to here. That's what that question does. It moves me. And here what I find, I don't want to believe that thought about Diane. I don't know what's going on with her. I have no idea what's going on in the Oval Office. I have no idea. You know, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. You know, I've often used Jesus as an example of this. If you've taken True Discernment, you saw it there. There are so many stories about Jesus's life. First of all, we have 4 different versions in the Bible alone. If you read the Gospels, they're not exactly the same. There was a little bit of filling in the gap by the people who wrote the Gospels, and they filled it in a little differently. See, they needed that cognitive closure. Why did Jesus say that? I can't understand. Let me put this in just to make it a little more clear. Right? A little bit of cognitive closure going on right there. So already, you know, just a short time after Jesus was no longer on the planet, the stories were beginning to get distorted. Fast forward to our time, there are so many, quote, channelings that tell different reasons for why Jesus said or did a different thing or what he did. You know, there are people who believe it. To me, it sounds ridiculous, but they believe it to be pure fact that actually Mary was impregnated by aliens and Jesus is half alien. And that's why he was able to do the miracles and the things that he did. It was his alien power. People believe that as surely as you believe whatever you believe about Jesus. How many of us are willing to tell the truth? I don't know. The truth is, I don't even know for a fact that a man named Jesus actually walked the planet. And there's a whole nother group of people that say he didn't, and they have all of their proof that they've found to prove that. But of course, everybody's proving what they believe with this confirmation bias. You know, they're seeking out the information that proves what they already believe. What if we just get honest? I don't know. Now, that doesn't mean you can't read the Bible, because there can be helpfulness in the stories, whether they're true or not. In fact, that's something I learned in college. You know, I was taking this American literature course, and there was this one story, and I think I was just feeling overwhelmed and sick of homework, and, you know, I was in a rotten mood, and I actually, you know, snapped at my teacher. And I said something like, why are we wasting time reading these stupid stories anyway? There's no truth here. They're fiction stories. And she said, there's a lot more truth in fiction than you're realizing. I started looking and I realized she was right. Every one of these stories that were complete fiction that we were studying in that American literature class pointed to a truth about humanity, a truth about our psyches, right? So you don't have to say the story is true. You don't have to believe the story is true. You don't have to make up that you're right. Your version of Jesus's life is right. Whether he was or wasn't married to Mary Magdalene, whether he did or did not have children. You don't have to support that story, because the truth is you don't know. But what's here that's helpful to me in my awakening? There might be more truth in that story that's worthwhile, even if the story isn't. For example, what about Krishna and Arjuna? Did they live? Is that just a story? Does it matter? Or is there a lot of truth in the Bhagavad Gita, regardless of whether it's a story, a fictional story, or whether those characters actually walked on the planet? Sometimes it's a little easier for people from our culture to look at Krishna and Arjuna than it is to look at Jesus and see. We don't really know if they lived. We don't really know if they're characters. But yeah, there's some stuff here that's useful. So Adyashanti says, freedom is a state of complete and absolute insecurity and not knowing, which means no cognitive closure. Cognitive closure is ego. Cognitive closure is ego. Come on, you guys have heard this before. The way we said it before was the I know mind is ego. This isn't new information. But we need to have our eyes opened. And I think that possibly one reason conspiracy theories grew so much in 2020 was because the sense of not feeling secure grew, right? With COVID, with Black Lives Matter, with a president who really was standing right there in front of the podium, making stuff up and believing it, and people could see that. That made them uncomfortable, It made people very, very uncomfortable. And because people had no cognitive closure, they began to seek it en masse. And more people began to believe conspiracy theories than ever before. Now, I don't know what 2021 will bring. I don't know if conspiracy theories will start to fade back and be less popular like they were prior to 2020. But I do know we all have a choice. Are we going to let our mind make stuff up and then believe it and then look for what proves us right? Or are we going to give this stuff up and start towards that pure truth, which is really unknowing, that we must want, or we wouldn't be involved with awakening together? Adyashanti says the unknown is more vast, more open, more peaceful, and more freeing than you ever imagined it would be. He advises us to rest deeply in the unknown, which begins with resting deeply in not knowing. He says, without trying to escape. And of course, when the mind seeks that cognitive closure, it's trying to escape the unknown. So that's it. That's all I have for today. I have selected a song for us to pay attention to as we contemplate this teaching. It's by Van Morrison, and it is called The Mystery. Thank you very much. And I did want to mention that Awakening Together, of course, is supported by your donations. So if you feel called to do so, you can click on the link that Dawn has provided in the chat and make a donation. So is there anybody who has anything they would like to share based on today's topic, wanting to know invites deception into our lives? Joanne, I see your hand first. Yes.
I just want to say, wow. That was just so great. And what I especially liked was when you related it, I see a whole lot of conspiracy theory in my friends and family, and it's disturbing. And I never thought about even looking it up. Like, what was I thinking? Anyway, what I especially like though is the subtleties you presented. I mean, that's those that conspiracy theory happens in our mind, like, well, my mind, all of the time, really. It's the subtleties that maybe potentially even sort of grow into being more accepting of grander conspiracy theories. So I loved it. Like, I loved it. Thanks.
Thank you, Joanne. And Gloria, I see your hand.
Hello, hello, hello. Greetings, beloveds. Greetings. I just wanted to jump in. I'm laughing because of the green screen in the background. I don't know how to make that any different. But anyway, I wanted to jump in here, first of all, and say thank you to Regina, to the reading, to the reader, to the message that was given today. I wanted to share that, recently I was doing this practice, and I just recently let this practice go, which I also want to give thanks for the perfection that is this moment. So I recently, I was doing this practice, and honestly, I really don't know where I picked this up from. I don't recall reading it anywhere. I don't recall picking it up in a book. It was just, something that popped into my head. I do know what the intention was with this thought, is that I wanted to get to a point where I could rely on intuition, on guidance to lead me forward. So I started doing this thing where I was asking this question: what would one who knows do? Right? And I really found this question to be helpful. It made me feel comfortable when I was in situations, even in small situations, like if I was choosing lunch, right? If I was choosing from a menu, I'd go inward and say, what would one who knows do? And even when I was making big decisions at times, I would remember to ask that question. And that question would, as I mentioned, it would bring me comfort. It would bring me peace. And sometimes it would actually give me answers. So I was surprised almost recently in the past couple of weeks when it was just kind of came out of nowhere that there's just knowing, that there's not this knower there's not just one who, there's just knowing that it's just that. So this teaching today helped me to kind of connect the dots in the way that Holy Spirit does so magnificently and wonderfully. Help me to connect those dots that, you were, the intention was there. As Regina mentioned today, to seek, to look, to want to know the truth is a normal, innocent, inherent thing that we all do. We're all here because we sought the truth, because we wanted to know what the truth is. Well, the thing is that's how beliefs work. Somebody famous said, well, if you believe it's true, then it is. If you don't believe it's true, it is. Whatever you believe becomes the truth because of what she's talking about here, this confirmational thing that we seek. So the real thing becomes what we really want, which is also what Regina touched on today, what the true desire was. You see, my true desire with asking, what would one who knows do? My true desire there was truth. My true desire was guidance. So even though, I may have been relying or looking for that closure, that cognitive closure that we all seek, that we all find comfort in, at the end of the day, it was still revealed to me that there's only knowing. Knowing is. And if I can learn to rest with the fact that knowing exists, I am a part of that knowing. And I don't have to know exactly what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and who it's going to happen to, and how it's going to happen. I don't need all of those pieces. In fact, if we were to be bombarded with all of those pieces, we probably couldn't even handle it. So at the end of the day, knowing is, beingness is, it's our inherent, natural, beautiful nature. And to just go and allow and accept is like the reading said today, pure power, pure personal power to live in that space of being the knowing without actually knowing, right? It's this whole paradox that we all strive to live through and strive to move beyond. My prayer today is that I would be able to learn to live in this space as the knowing, without needing to have all of the pieces revealed to me, that I wouldn't be so easily swept away by what I just want to see or what I just want to believe, that I would be open and willing enough to accept what shows up as it is, because in truth, it is all perfect. And that's all I wanted to say. I wanted to send my love to everybody, and I wish you all a very pleasant afternoon.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
thank you very much, Gloria. I always love listening to you. Like I said, the very first time I heard you, it was during your first homily. I said, you're a natural born minister, and you are. Even in sharing now, I could hear that in there. So thank you very much, Gloria.
Hey, Regina, it's Ron.
Hey, Ron.
I can't raise my hand for some reason. I'm not sure why it doesn't show up. But so timely, right on point. Confirmation bias is not something that people look at that much. There's a great, I think it's either Netflix or HBO special on that, as it relates to as it not just relates to media, but as it relates to internet searches and things like that. And what many people don't realize, I didn't to the fullest extent, is anything you search for builds a history within the code. And so going forward, whatever it brings up, whenever you put in any query, then is going to match your confirmation bias in general. So you may go, yeah, I search for all these things on the internet. I don't find anything that disputes, what I believe is true about this. Therefore, it must be true. It's just a hidden giant feeding you only part of what's out there because it's chosen to do so. And not because it's trying to be nefarious. It does that because that's how it gets advertised, how it's able to justify to advertisers that what people click on, they're going to then have some kind of lasting result and they can charge them more. So it's all just it's all in there. It's all kind of baked in.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's interesting because that's exactly what the mind does too. So it's like the internet has a bias that copies the mind's bias, but then again makes it more complicated to get beyond. So thank you so much for sharing that, Ron. I did not know that. That's an interesting piece of information. It's time for us. We're a little late. George, do you care if we play the closing song? Is that good for you? All right. So I would like to go ahead and play this closing song. This is one of my favorite songs. It's from the movie Frozen 2, but this is actually a cover. The name of this song is Into the Unknown, and the young lady who's singing it is named Pepita. Isn't she beautiful? And you know where she is when she's singing that song? I don't know. Bye, everyone.
You've been watching our online gathering. It happens weekly on Sundays at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time. To join us live in the sanctuary, visit our website, awakening-together.org. You'll want to click on Online Sanctuary in the main menu, and then in the drop-down menu, look for How to Enter the Sanctuary. Right there at the top of the page is a clickable link. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary and join with you in fellowship. Thank you again for watching. Also, please know that if you'd like to stay connected via the Awakening Together channel here on YouTube, you can subscribe and hit the bell for more notifications. We hope to see you in the sanctuary.